31-year-old Margaret Mbitu closed from work on the 30th of October 2023 and was never seen again. Her family reported her missing, and authorities, as usual, got to work. Now, this case was unfolding in the United States of America, but Margaret Mbitu is originally an African. Fast forward. Margaret Mbitu will be found unalived in a vehicle at the Logan Airport in Boston, in the United States. How did she get there? Who was she with, and who was responsible for her being unalived? This is the true crime story of Margaret Mbitu and one man who, up to date, thinks he's smarter than the law and wiser and more elusive than all security agencies across continents, i.e., Africa and the United States. So, this was how the case began. Margaret Mbitu was just one bubbly lady with her family in the United States, and she was the last born of all her siblings, so she was the youngest, very affable and loved by all. She comes from a family where all the children are nurses, having migrated from Africa to the United States in 2007. Now, fast forward, as at the 30th of October, Margaret was last seen closing from work and saying goodbye to her colleagues. It would have been expected that from that point, her next destination would have been her going home to her family to get some rest. However, after Margaret didn't show up at home as per her usual schedule, the family got worried and lodged a missing persons report with the police. Investigations later led to Margaret being found unalived in a vehicle at the Logan Airport in Boston, Massachusetts. Now, police set about digging deeper to ascertain answers as to how come she ended there, who did this to her, and what was the relationship and even the motive for all this. And the final question, how they were going to apprehend this person. So, investigations ensued, and CCTV cameras and other intelligence eventually led to a suspect coming up. Now, this suspect was in the person of a man called Kevin Kinyanjui Kangeti. He is a Kenyan national, but he is also living in the United States of America. So, there was a footage showing Kevin in that same vehicle in which Margaret was found in, driving to the airport. But then guess what? Kevin was not alone. It turns out that Margaret was in the car with Kevin, driving to that airport. See where this is going? Yeah. So they drove to this airport. Kevin came out, but it turns out Margaret never came out of the car. Because, as it will turn out, Kevin unalived her in the vehicle, left her there, and then boarded a plane straight to Kenya in East Africa. That is very unsettling. So it seems that he had planned this all the way, because he had already booked that ticket and he was on his way there to board the flight. So Margaret was just accompanying him to the airport. And this was what he had in mind for her. And the nature in which she was found is something that is very terrible. So I'm imagining how the conversation was leading up to they arriving at the airport, because nothing would show. If something was off, I'm sure Margaret would have found a reason to get out of the vehicle. And for a man to be able to do that, that shows you the level of darkness in him, and that shows you the level of evil intelligence that he has. Now, after he did this, he boarded the flight and left. So at the time the police found Margaret in this vehicle, and eventually investigations revealed that Kevin is the key suspect, they found that he had actually left the country and gone to Africa in Kenya. This really devastated Margaret's family, because imagine how it goes. Nobody saw this coming. She was a bubbly young woman, just 31 years old, and this happens to her. But then questions were coming up. Was this random, or there was a relationship? Well, my research is showing that this could possibly be a crime of passion, because it's being rumored that Kevin and Margaret Mbitu were actually having a dating relationship over a period, until the point where Margaret Mbitu allegedly decided to call it quits with Kevin. It is being reported that Kevin didn't take kindly to this, and he was sort of trying to convince Margaret not to dump him, but to stay on so they continue the relationship. But Margaret's mind seems to have been made up. Now, if that was the case, I'm yet to understand or even get to know how come Margaret would still get into a vehicle with him to go to the airport and see him off. Did he trick her? Or was it a kind gesture out of the goodness of her heart, knowing how good people say that she was? Either way, somehow, it seems that Kevin was able to find a way to convince her to join him in that vehicle so they go to the airport. Now, on the back of this, Kevin is now one of the most wanted men in the United States of America, as well as one of the most wanted men in his own country, Kenya, because, as is expected, the security agencies in the United States did not leave the keys there because Kevin has left the country. No. And this is what I love about them. They followed through to Kenya and called on the Kenyan authorities to make sure that they apprehend Kevin and extradite him back to the United States for him to face justice. So this was ongoing. And you can tell that Kevin seems to have a method to his madness, because when he landed in Kenya, he was still able to evade capture. It took police officers a concerted effort that lasted for up to about 3 months before they eventually arrested him in a nightclub. And now, Kevin Kangeti is being prepared for extradition to the United States of America. Now, my 2 cents on this case. First of all, if the rumors are true that Kevin did this as a crime of passion due to the fact that Margaret Mbitu was leaving him, well, I don't think this is justified in any way. I don't think so. It's a dating relationship. It's not a contract that she has to oblige to and execute. So if she's opting out, in as much as it would be painful and maybe heartbreaking, I think that you have no choice. You can decide to plead, negotiate, try to convince her, do better and all, but the list of options available to you in that situation does not include you deciding to unalive her. But that is the point. Some people are not good at handling rejection. And I think sometimes it's also part of the upbringing. Some people were brought up not being trained on how to handle rejection and someone saying no to their face. So the moment they are faced with such a situation, either they rage up and it becomes something else, or they just go crazy because they don't know how to handle the rejection. But the truth is, you are just dating. Even in marriage, people just get up one day and decide to divorce the other spouse. So how much more when it's a dating relationship? Someone would say this is easier said than done. Yeah, I respect it. But what I'm saying is the fact. And now, Kevin is in the arms of the law, expected to be extradited back to the United States to face justice. And I hope he faces the full rigors of the law. I don't know if it will get to the point where he could face life or something harsher, but I hope the law applies the justice to him to its full extent, especially given the fact that it seems so chilling and calculated the way he planned it out and executed it. I don't think he did it out of random. I think there was a method to it. But again, it could also have been triggered. Maybe he didn't intend to, because for how the whole thing played out, someone would have expected that you can't leave a crime scene at an airport and check out and just board a flight. Definitely, you will know they will find it out very soon. So maybe if he had actually put more planning to it, he may not have done this crime at the airport and would have probably done it elsewhere. So that argument could sort of try to suggest that maybe it was a spontaneous thing that happened due to an issue that came up between them when they were in the vehicle. I don't know. But once Kevin gets to court and he's pushed, maybe he may come out to spill the beans. But in such instances, what really saddens me is the victim is also not here with us to give her version of whatever happened. So it begins to look like the suspect or the culprit speaks to whatever narrative he or she wants to push. And then it's up to investigators to try to find information and evidence and facts out there that can be pieced together to put up a sort of chronicle of what played out from the victim's perspective. And I think sometimes it might not do as much justice as it would have if the victim was here in person to speak for herself. But hey, it is what it is. Very, very unfortunate for that matter. So Kevin is due back in the United States, and I'm waiting to see how this would play out. But what do you think about all this? You agree with me that some people were brought up not being trained on how to take rejection and how to handle no being said to their face, and such that some throw tantrums even as adults, and sometimes they get violent and angry, and sometimes they go nuclear and blow up. I think that relationships are not a do or die affair. You know, there's more to life out there. So that is my 2 cents. But hey, let's take a cue from this. If you are going on, just be careful, because things are going crazy in 2023 and they are even going crazier in 2024. Relationships are getting more crazier. People are having more funny ideas and people are getting very vindictive. And sometimes too, it could be because of the so-called investments that some partners may have put in certain relationships. I'm told some people put financial investments in such relationships very heavily, emotional investments and all. Well, I don't know, but if even that's the case, it still does not justify you deciding that you are going to unalive the other person when he or she decides that he or she wants to call it quits in the relationship. That's my 2 cents. Let's have a discuss on this. What do you think about all the things I've said? If you also know anything about this case I didn't touch on, just let me know. And I'm following it to see how the extradition will go. I'm hoping that no funny things would happen between the period that he is scheduled to be extradited and when he would actually be extradited, because this is Africa. Sometimes some countries have very funny occurrences when it comes to this, especially if the corporate can flash some cash. I'm not saying this will happen here, but you never know. So I'm hoping that the security agencies will be extra vigilant and they'll keep an eye out, because for me, it looks like Kevin Kangeti has a method to whatever he's doing. Looks like he has an intelligence he moves with. So they should be very careful and leave hand with him. I've said my piece. I rest my case. Keep an eye out. Stay safe out there. I'll bring you updates as and when they are due.